Welcome to Tonight. We delve into a chilling tale of deception and deduction, set in the grand yet shadowy halls of a 1920s English country estate. Picture yourself by a crackling fire as we unravel the fatal secret of Colonel Pritchard, with the inimitable Hercule Poirot leading the charge. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Share in the comments below. Now settle in as we step into a world of secrets, lies, and a murder most foul. Chapter 1. Introduction and Setup. Pscheiben. The year is 1927, and the Dorset countryside lies draped in the golden hues of autumn. Pritchard Hall, a Georgian manor of weathered stone and ivy-clad walls, stands as a testament to old wealth and older secrets. Its tall windows glint under a sky heavy with clouds, and the air carries the crisp scent of fallen leaves. Within these walls, Colonel Reginald Pritchard, a retired military man of iron discipline and unyielding principles, prepares to host a weekend gathering. To the outside world, the colonel is a paragon of duty, his chest adorned with medals from campaigns in India and the Great War. But to those who know him best, his stern gaze and clipped commands hint at a man burdened by more than military memories. The guests arrive in a procession of gleaming motor cars, their tyres crunching on the gravel drive. First is Lady Eleanor Pritchard, the colonel's wife, whose elegance is matched only by her reserve. Her auburn hair is swept into a chignon, and her emerald gown shimmers as she greets each arrival with a smile that never quite reaches her eyes. Whispers among the staff suggest her marriage to the colonel, once passionate, has cooled into a formal arrangement, strained by unspoken grievances. She moves through the manor with the grace of a ghost, her thoughts as impenetrable as the mist rolling over the hills. Next comes Captain Arthur Langley, the colonel's former aide-de-camp, a broad-shouldered man whose boyish charm is tempered by a haunted look. His uniform, though long discarded, seems to linger in his rigid posture. Langley served under the colonel in the war, their bond forged in the trenches but frayed by a shadowy incident neither speaks of. He carries a silver cigarette case, engraved with the colonel's initials, a gift from years past, that he fingers nervously as he steps into the hall. Miss Clara Henshaw, the colonel's niece, arrives with a burst of energy that seems to defy the manor's sombre air. A vivacious heiress of 22, her golden curls and infectious laugh draw every eye. Yet her flirtations with the young men of Dorset, and her penchant for scandal, have earned her the colonel's disapproval. She wears a sapphire pendant, a family heirloom, and her laughter echoes through the oak-panelled foyer, though her eyes dart to the colonel with a mix of defiance and fear. Dr. Maurice Blackwood, the family physician, follows, his calm demeanour and wire-rimmed spectacles lending him an air of quiet authority. His black medical bag swings at his side, a constant companion. Blackwood has tended to the Pritchards for years, his steady hands and measured words a comfort to the household. Yet there is an intensity in his gaze, a flicker of something unspoken when he looks at the colonel, as if privy to secrets no one else shares. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, greets each guest with a curt nod. Her grey hair is pulled tightly into a bun, and her black dress is as severe as her expression. Fowler has served the Pritchards for 3 decades, her loyalty to the colonel bordering on reverence. She moves silently, her footsteps muffled by years of practice, and her sharp eyes miss nothing, though whether she shares what she sees is another matter. Finally, Mr. Victor Ramsay, a London solicitor with slicked back hair and tailored suit, arrives clutching a leather briefcase. His arrival is unexpected, his purpose vague but urgent. He speaks of legal matters, with a thin smile, his fingers tapping restlessly on the case. The staff whisper that Ramsay's presence signals changes to the colonel's will, a prospect that sets the household on edge. Hercule Poirot, the famed Belgian detective, is an unlikely guest, invited at the behest of Lady Eleanor's cousin, a mutual acquaintance from a case in Brussels. Poirot, with his immaculate moustache and polished shoes, cuts an incongruous figure among the English gentry. His grey eyes, sharp as a hawk's, take in every detail. The tension in Eleanor's smile, the tremor in Langley's hand, the way Clara's laughter falters when the colonel enters. Poirot has come for a weekend of rest, but rest, he knows, is seldom found in houses such as this. The great hall of Pritchard Hall is a study in grandeur and decay. Crystal chandeliers cast flickering light on faded tapestries, and a massive fireplace roars, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill of unease. The guests gather for pre-dinner drinks, the clink of glasses mingling with strained conversation. The Colonel, resplendent in a tailored dinner jacket, presides with military precision, though his usual composure is marred by a distracted air. He speaks little, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for an unseen threat. Dinner is served in the dining room, where candlelight dances on silver cutlery, and portraits of Pritchard ancestors glare from the walls. The menu is lavish: roast pheasant, creamed potatoes, and a claret of exceptional vintage, but the atmosphere is anything but festive. Langley, seated beside Clara, snaps at her playful teasing about his bachelorhood, his face flushing with more than wine. Eleanor, at the head of the table, picks at her food, her headache evident in the tightness of her jaw. Ramsay, ever the opportunist, presses the Colonel about pending documents, earning a curt rebuke. Blackwood, observing silently, offers Eleanor a powder for her headache, which she declines with a faint smile. Fowler hovers at the edges, directing the staff with a glance as sharp as a blade. Poirot, seated opposite the Colonel, notes the undercurrents of tension. He engages Clara in light conversation, probing gently about her plans for the future. She speaks of travel, of escaping the stifling manor, but her eyes flicker to the Colonel, who remains silent. Langley, emboldened by drink, recounts a wartime anecdote, only to falter when the Colonel fixes him with a cold stare. Ramsay, undeterred, mentions a charitable bequest the Colonel is considering, prompting a sharp intake of breath from Eleanor. The meal concludes in uneasy silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. As the guests retire to the drawing-room, the Colonel excuses himself. "I have matters to attend to in my study," he announces, his voice clipped. He strides from the room, his hand brushing the key in his pocket. A key, Poirot notes, that unlocks the heavy oak door of his private study, a room as impregnable as a fortress. The study, located in the west wing, is accessible only through that door, its windows bolted and its walls free of secret passages, or so the household claims. Poirot lingers in the drawing-room, sipping a tisane and observing the guests. Clara flirts with Langley, who rebuffs her with a scowl. Eleanor retires early, citing fatigue, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Blackwood and Ramsay engage in a hushed conversation by the fire, their words inaudible but their glances telling. Fowler, clearing glasses, pauses to watch them, her expression unreadable. Poirot, ever the student of human nature, senses a storm brewing beneath the manor's polished surface. As the clock strikes 10, Poirot retires to his room, a cosy chamber overlooking the gardens. He stands at the window, gazing at the moonlit lawns, his mind alive with questions. The Colonel's distraction, the guest's unease, the solicitor's urgency, all suggest a secret, one the Colonel guards closely. Poirot's little grey cells hum, but answers remain elusive. He extinguishes his lamp, the darkness settling around him like a cloak, and wonders what the morning will bring. Little does he know, the dawn will shatter the manor's fragile peace, setting the stage for a mystery that will test even his formidable intellect. Chapter 2. The Crime Discovered. The first light of dawn creeps through the heavy curtains of Pritchard Hall, casting pale fingers across the polished floors. The manor is silent, save for the distant clatter of pots from the kitchen, where the staff begin their daily tasks. At precisely 6 o'clock, Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, ascends the west wing staircase, her black dress rustling softly. In her hands she carries a silver tray with a porcelain teapot, a single cup, and a plate of shortbread. Colonel Pritchard's morning ritual, unchanged for decades. Her face, etched with the severity of a long service, betrays no emotion, though her steps slow as she approaches the study door. The heavy oak door, carved with intricate panels, is slightly ajar, a fact that stops Fowler in her tracks. The Colonel, a man of military precision, never leaves his study unlocked. She hesitates, her hand hovering over the brass knob, then pushes the door open. The tray slips from her grasp, crashing to the floor with a sound that shatters the morning's quiet. A scream tears from her throat, echoing through the manor's corridors. Hercule Poirot, roused from a light sleep by the commotion, is already dressing when a frantic knock sounds at his door. A pale-faced maid stammers, "It's the Colonel, sir. He's dead." Poirot, his moustache impeccably groomed despite the hour, follows her to the west wing, where a small crowd gathers outside the study. Captain Arthur Langley stands rigid, his jaw clenched, while Miss Clara Henshaw clutches her robe, her eyes wide with shock. Lady Eleanor Pritchard, summoned from her room, sways slightly, her face ashen. Dr. Maurice Blackwood pushes through, his medical bag in hand, and Mr. Victor Ramsay, the solicitor, hovers at the edges, his briefcase clutched tightly. Poirot steps into the study, his keen eyes taking in every detail. The room is a fortress of order, bookshelves lined with military histories, a mahogany desk polished to a mirror shine, and windows bolted shut against the autumn chill. At the desk sits Colonel Reginald Pritchard, slumped forward, his head resting on a blotter stained with ink and blood. A silver letter opener, its handle engraved with the Pritchard crest, protrudes from his chest. The wound is precise, the blood congealed, suggesting death occurred hours earlier, likely in the dead of night. The air carries a faint, acrid trace of cigar smoke, peculiar for a man known to despise tobacco. Poirot kneels beside the body, noting the colonel's rigid posture, as if he had been writing when struck. On the desk lies a half-finished letter, addressed to Ramsay in the colonel's meticulous hand. The matter of betrayal must be addressed. I cannot allow. The words trail off, the pen lying abandoned beside a glass of untouched brandy. A smudge of red wax, still tacky, marks the blotter's edge, catching Poirot's attention. He examines the key in the colonel's pocket, the only key to the study according to Fowler, and confirms the door's lock is intact with no signs of tampering. The windows, double-bolted from within, offer no entry point. An impossible crime, it seems, yet Poirot's little grey cells hum with possibility. The household gathers in the drawing room, their faces a tableau of grief, fear, and suspicion. Captain Hastings, Poirot's friend and confidant, arrives at the manor just as the chaos unfolds, having been delayed by a late train the previous evening. His practical, if somewhat plodding, presence steadies Poirot, who begins his inquiries with characteristic precision. "We must establish the facts, mon ami," Poirot murmurs, his eyes scanning the group. "A man does not die in a locked room without reason." Lady Eleanor, her voice trembling, confirms she retired to her room after dinner, alone, and heard nothing unusual. Her grief seems genuine, but Poirot notes the tightness in her hands, clasped as if holding back a secret. Langley, his voice rough with emotion, claims he spent the evening in the billiard room, drinking alone to settle old ghosts. He admits to a heated exchange with the colonel during the war, a mission gone wrong that cost lives, but insists it was long forgiven. Clara, her usual vivacity dimmed, says she was reading in the library until midnight, though her fidgeting hands betray unease. Blackwood, ever composed, reports he was in his room, preparing for a morning ride, and offers to examine the body, though Poirot waves him off for now. Fowler, her voice low and fervent, mutters about curses and enemies, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Ramsay, his slick demeanour faltering, insists he was drafting documents in the guest wing, far from the study, and presses for the will to be read, citing legal obligations. Poirot returns to the study, Hastings at his side to examine the scene further. The room's austerity reflects the colonel's character. No frivolous decorations, only a portrait of a younger Pritchard in uniform, his eyes stern even in paint. The safe behind the portrait is locked, but Poirot notes scratches around the keyhole suggesting recent use. The red wax smudge intrigues him. It matches a candle in the library, where Clara claimed to be reading. The cigar smoke, faint but persistent, leads Poirot to inspect the fireplace, where a trace of ash suggests something was recently burned. A single curtain is slightly askew, though the window behind it remains bolted. The household's alibis, while plausible, are flimsy, each suspect free to move in the night's quiet hours. Poirot questions the staff, learning from a footman that the colonel was seen pacing the West Wing corridor at 10:30 shortly after retiring to his study. A gardener, roused by the commotion, mentions seeing a shadow near the study window around midnight, but the bolted windows cast doubt on this account. The maid who discovered Fowler's scream reports finding a single pearl earring near the study door, a delicate thing that Clara later identifies as hers, though she swears she never left the library. Poirot's mind churns. The locked room is a puzzle, but he suspects the answer lies not in mechanics but in human nature. The letter's mention of betrayal suggests the colonel knew his killer, trusted them enough to let them into his sanctum. The The cigar smoke, the wax, the earring, all are pieces of a mosaic, but the picture remains unclear. The truth, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice soft but firm, is hidden in the details we overlook. We must look closer. As the morning sun climbs higher, the manor buzzes with unease. Eleanor withdraws to her room, her composure fraying. Langley storms off to the stables, his temper barely contained. Clara, pale and shaken, clings to her sapphire pendant, her eyes darting to every shadow. Blackwood, methodical as ever, offers to assist the coroner, who is due to arrive soon. Fowler resumes her duties, her silence heavy with unspoken thoughts. Ramsay, ever opportunistic, corners Eleanor to discuss the will, his voice low and insistent. Poirot, standing by the study window, gazes at the manicured lawns below. The impossible crime gnaws at him, but he trusts his method, order, logic, and the study of human frailties. The colonel locked his door, he muses to Hastings, but did he lock out his killer, or lock them in with him? The question hangs in the air unanswered, as the manor braces for the investigation to come. Chapter 3. Investigation begins. The morning sun struggles to pierce the heavy clouds over Pritchard Hall, casting a pallid light through the manor's tall windows. The study, where Colonel Reginald Pritchard met his violent end, remains sealed, its oak door a silent sentinel. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit, stands in the great hall, his moustache twitching as he surveys the gathered household. Captain Hastings, his loyal friend, hovers nearby, jotting notes in a small leather book, his brow furrowed with concern. The air is thick with tension, the guests' faces etched with grief, suspicion, and something less definable. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. Poirot begins his investigation with the precision of a conductor, orchestrating questions to draw out the truth. "We must proceed with method, mon ami," he tells Hastings, his voice low but firm. "The locked room is a puzzle, yes, but it is the hearts of those within this house that hold the key." He calls the suspects one by one to the drawing-room, where a fire crackles, doing little to warm the chilled atmosphere. First is Lady Eleanor Pritchard, the colonel's widow, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her emerald eyes clouded with sorrow. She sits rigidly, her hands folded in her lap, and speaks in a measured tone. "Reginald was troubled these past weeks," she admits, her voice catching. "He spoke of financial irregularities, of trusts being mishandled." She glances at the door as if expecting the colonel to stride in and silence her. When pressed about her movements, she insists she retired to her room after dinner, plagued by a headache, and heard nothing until Mrs. Fowler's scream at dawn. Poirot notes the faint tremor in her fingers, the way her gaze avoids his, and wonders what she conceals behind her polished facade. Captain Arthur Langley follows, his broad shoulders hunched as he paces the room. His boyish charm is gone, replaced by a raw edge, his hands clenching and unclenching. "I was in the billiard room, drinking," he says gruffly, admitting to downing half a bottle of whiskey to drown old memories. He confirms a wartime falling out with the colonel, a failed mission in 1917 that cost men their lives, but insists it was resolved years ago. "He was like a father to me," Langley says, though his eyes darken with something unspoken. Poirot observes the silver cigarette case in Langley's pocket, engraved with the colonel's initials, and asks if he smoked in the billiard room. Langley hesitates, then denies it, claiming he prefers cigarettes. The faint smell of cigar smoke in the study lingers in Poirot's mind. Miss Clara Henshaw, the colonel's niece, enters with a nervous laugh, her golden curls dishevelled, her sapphire pendant glinting at her throat. She perches on the edge of a chair, her fingers twisting the fabric of her dress. "I was in the library reading," she says, her voice too bright. "Some dreadful Gothic novel, perfect for a stormy night." But when Poirot mentions the pearl earring found near the study, her face pales. "I must have lost it earlier," she stammers, insisting she never left the library. Poirot, recalling the red wax smudge on the colonel's desk, asks if she lit a candle while reading. Clara nods, then falters, admitting the library's candle was red but claiming she extinguished it before retiring. Her unease is palpable, and Poirot marks her as one to watch. Dr. Maurice Blackwood, the family physician, exudes calm as he takes his seat, his wire-rimmed spectacles glinting in the firelight. His medical bag rests at his feet, a silent witness to his profession. He confirms treating the Colonel for a heart condition, prescribing rest and digitalis to steady his pulse. Reginald was under strain, Blackwood says, his voice smooth. Business matters, I believe. When asked about his movements, he claims he was in his room, organising his medical notes and preparing for a morning ride. Poirot, probing gently, asks about sedatives in his bag, noting a vial glimpsed earlier. Blackwood's composure flickers, but he explains it's for his own insomnia, not uncommon for a doctor. Poirot nods, his eyes lingering on the bag, wondering what else it might conceal. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, is next, her black dress as severe as her expression. She stands rather than sits, her hands clasped tightly. "The Colonel was a great man," she says, her voice fervent. "But he had enemies, sir, mark my words." She refuses to name them, muttering about disloyalty and curses on this house. Her alibi is the servants' quarters, where she claims to have been mending linens until midnight. Poirot, sensing her devotion borders on obsession, asks if she ever entered the study after the Colonel retired. Her eyes narrow and she snaps, "I'd never disturb him." Her vehemence intrigues Poirot, who wonders if her loyalty hides a deeper motive. Mr. Victor Ramsay, the solicitor, enters last, his slicked back hair and tailored suit at odds with the manor's sombre mood. His briefcase, ever present, rests on his lap as he speaks of urgent legal matters. "The Colonel was revising his will," Ramsay admits, his tone guarded. He wished to redirect his fortune, perhaps to charity. This revelation draws gasps from the staff eavesdropping nearby, and Poirot notes Ramsay's nervous habit of tapping his fingers. His alibi, drafting documents in the guest wing, seems solid, but his insistence on reading the will immediately raises Poirot's suspicions. "A man does not revise his will without reason," Poirot muses aloud, watching Ramsay squirm. With interviews complete, Poirot returns to the study, Hastings trailing behind. The room remains as it was. The Colonel slumped at his desk, the letter opener in his chest, the half-finished letter hinting at betrayal. Poirot examines the safe behind the portrait, finding it empty save for a cryptic note in the Colonel's hand. The truth lies in the shadow of valour. The words puzzle Hastings, who suggests a burglary gone wrong, but Poirot dismisses it. "The letter opener, mon ami, is a weapon of intimacy, not opportunity," he says. The red wax smudge, matching the library candle, suggests a connection to Clara, but Poirot suspects it may be too convenient. The cigar smoke too nags at him. No one admits to smoking, yet the ash in the fireplace hints at burned documents. Poirot tests the study's mechanics, confirming the windows are bolted and the walls free of secret passages. The door's lock, operated by the Colonel's key, shows no signs of force. He experiments with the key, locking and unlocking the door, and notes its weight, its fit precise. "The room was locked from within," he murmurs, "but by whom?" Hastings, ever practical, points out the gardener's tale of a shadowy figure at midnight, but Poirot shakes his head. A shadow outside a bolted window is a distraction, not a solution. The household resumes its uneasy rhythm. Eleanor retreats to her room, her grief tinged with exhaustion. Langley, restless, paces the grounds, his cigarette case glinting in the sunlight. Clara, clutching her Gothic novel, avoids the library, her laughter replaced by nervous glances. Blackwood offers to assist the coroner, who arrives to confirm the time of death, between 10 and midnight, based on rigor mortis. Fowler oversees the staff with a hawk's eye, her mutterings about curses unsettling the maids. Ramsay, undeterred, presses Eleanor about the will, his urgency bordering on desperation. Poirot, standing by the study's fireplace, runs his fingers along the mantel, his mind racing. The note about valour suggests a military connection, perhaps tied to Langley or Blackwood, both veterans. The wax, the smoke, the earring, all are clues. But Poirot senses they are pieces of a larger deception. "We must look beyond the obvious, Hastings," he says, his voice deliberate. "The truth is not in what we see, but in what we assume to be true." As the day wears on, the manor feels like a pressure cooker, its inhabitants waiting for the next revelation. Poirot, undaunted, prepares to dig deeper, his grey cells poised to unravel the enigma of Pritchard Hall. Chapter 3. Clues and Red Herrings. The afternoon light filters through the leaded windows of Pritchard Hall, painting the oak-panelled corridors in muted golds and greys. The manor hums with an uneasy quiet, broken only by the distant footsteps of servants and the occasional creak of ancient floorboards. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes gleaming, moves through the house with the precision of a bloodhound, his grey eyes missing nothing. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, clutches his notebook, his earnest face a contrast to Poirot's measured calm. The locked-room murder of Colonel Pritchard remains an enigma, but Poirot is certain the truth lies in the details that, thus far, have only deepened the mystery. Poirot returns to the study, where the Colonel's body has been removed by the coroner, leaving behind a sterile emptiness. The letter opener, now in police custody, was confirmed as the murder weapon, its blade clean but deadly. The half-finished letter, the red wax smudge, and the faint trace of cigar smoke linger in Poirot's mind, each a thread in a tapestry of deception. He kneels by the desk, examining the red wax more closely. It matches the library candle, as Clara claimed, but its tacky texture suggests it was applied recently, perhaps hours before the murder. "A curious detail, Hastings," Poirot murmurs, for a man who preferred electric lamps. In the library, Poirot finds the red candle, its wick charred but intact. Nearby, in an ashtray, lies a half-burned cigar, its aroma matching the study's lingering scent. Clara swore she only read in the library, yet the cigar suggests someone else was there, or someone wishes it to appear so. Poirot's fingers trace the bookshelves, pausing at a volume of military history slightly askew. Behind it, he finds a torn scrap of paper, its edges singed with the words "debts repaid" scrawled in a hurried hand. The handwriting is not the Colonel's, and Poirot tucks it into his pocket, his moustache twitching with interest. The investigation takes a new turn when a maid, trembling, reports a discovery in Captain Arthur Langley's room. Hidden in his shaving kit is a folded note, its ink smudged but legible. "Debts repaid in full." The phrase echoes the library scrap, and Hastings, ever quick to jump to conclusions, suggests Langley's guilt. He had a grudge against the Colonel, Poirot, and this note, it's practically a confession. Poirot, however, urges caution. "A clue so obvious, mon ami, is often a lie," he says, noting the note's pristine condition, as if placed deliberately. Langley, confronted, denies writing it, his face flushing with anger. "Someone's framing me," he snaps, his hand straying to his engraved cigarette case. Poirot observes the tremor in his fingers, wondering if it betrays guilt or fear. Miss Clara Henshaw becomes the next focus when a gardener, tending the rose beds, finds a second pearl earring near the study window. It matches the one found by the study door, and Clara, summoned to explain, grows pale. "I lost that earring days ago," she insists, her voice quavering. "I wasn't near the study." But her alibi, reading in the library, crumbles when Poirot reveals the cigar in the ashtray. "You did not mention smoking, mademoiselle," he says gently, watching her twist her sapphire pendant. Clara admits to lighting the candle but denies the cigar, her eyes darting to the door. Poirot senses she's hiding something. Perhaps not murder, but a secret tied to the night's events. Dr. Maurice Blackwood draws Poirot's attention when a footman reports seeing him near the West Wing at 11, despite his claim of being in his room. Blackwood, unruffled, adjusts his spectacles and explains he was fetching a book from the library. Poirot, inspecting Blackwood's medical bag, finds a vial of sedative, chloral hydrate, potent enough to incapacitate. "For my insomnia," Blackwood repeats, his tone steady but his eyes sharp. Poirot notes a faint red wax stain on the bag's handle, identical to the study's smudge. A coincidence, perhaps, Poirot muses aloud, though his tone suggests otherwise. Blackwood's calm demeanour feels too polished, and Poirot wonders what lies beneath his clinical exterior. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, proves elusive, her duties keeping her in constant motion. Poirot corners her in the pantry, where she's arranging jars with mechanical precision. Her devotion to the Colonel borders on reverence, but when asked about the study's key, she bristles. "Only the Colonel had it," she insists, her voice sharp. "No one else could enter." Yet Poirot discovers a second key, rusted and unused, in a drawer of the servants' hall. Fowler claims it's an old spare, long discarded, but its presence raises questions. Was it truly unusable, or is it a clever misdirection? Fowler's fervent loyalty, Poirot suspects, may mask a deeper agenda. Mr. Victor Ramsay, the solicitor, grows increasingly agitated as the day progresses. Poirot finds him in the drawing room, rifling through his briefcase, papers spilling onto the table. Among them is a draft of the Colonel's will, disinheriting Clara and Langley in favour of a veterans' charity. He was adamant, Ramsay says, his fingers tapping nervously, but he hadn't signed it yet. Poirot notes a faint cigar scent on Ramsay's coat, though he claims to detest smoking. The solicitor's urgency to finalise the will feels suspicious, and Poirot wonders if he stood to gain from the Colonel's death. Poirot tests the study's mechanics again, focusing on the locked door. He experiments with the key, noting its smooth operation, and inspects the windows, still bolted. A faint scratch on the window frame catches his eye, suggesting someone tampered with it, though the bolts remain secure. The gardener's tale of a shadowy figure at midnight nags at him, but the physical evidence refutes an external intruder. The answer is within, Hastings, Poirot says, his voice deliberate. The locked room is not a fortress, it is a stage. A new clue emerges when a maid reports a missing silver cigarette lighter from the drawing room, engraved with the Colonel's initials. It was last seen the previous evening when Langley and Ramsay were drinking there. Poirot questions Langley, who denies taking it, though his cigarette case, also engraved, suggests a pattern of gifts from the Colonel. The lighter's absence feels significant, perhaps tied to the cigar smoke, but Poirot files it away for now. The household grows restless as rumours swirl. Lady Eleanor Pritchard, pale and withdrawn, avoids the others, her grief tinged with something Poirot cannot yet name. Langley storms through the gardens, his temper fraying. Clara retreats to her room, claiming a headache, while Blackwood offers to prescribe her something, his attentiveness bordering on intrusive. Fowler mutters about disloyalty to the staff, her words carrying a weight that unsettles them. Ramsay, ever the opportunist, presses Eleanor for a meeting, his briefcase never far from hand. Poirot, standing in the library, gazes at the red candle, its wax pooling like blood. The singed paper, the cigar, the earring, the note, each clue pulls him in a different direction, yet he senses a pattern. The killer wishes us to see chaos, he tells Hastings, but there is order in deception. He resolves to probe deeper, to unravel the motives behind these carefully placed distractions. The note about debts repaid feels too convenient, the earrings too neatly found. The cigar smoke, he suspects, is a deliberate plant, but by whom? As evening falls, the manor's atmosphere grows heavier, the clouds outside mirroring the suspicion within. Poirot, undeterred, prepares for the next phase of his investigation, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The truth, Hastings, he says, his eyes gleaming, is hidden not in what we find, but in why it was left for us to find. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The afternoon light filters through the leaded windows of Pritchard Hall, painting the oak-panelled corridors in muted golds and greys. The manor hums with an uneasy quiet, broken only by the distant footsteps of servants and the occasional creak of ancient floorboards. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes gleaming, moves through the house with the precision of a bloodhound, his grey eyes missing nothing. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, clutches his notebook, his earnest face a contrast to Poirot's measured calm. The locked room murder of Colonel Pritchard remains an enigma, but Poirot is certain the truth lies in the details that thus far have only deepened the mystery. Poirot returns to the study, where the Colonel's body has been removed by the coroner, leaving behind a sterile emptiness. The letter opener, now in police custody, was confirmed as the murder weapon, its blade clean but deadly. The half-finished letter, the red wax smudge, and the faint trace of cigar smoke linger in Poirot's mind, each a thread in a tapestry of deception. He kneels by the desk, examining the red wax more closely. It matches the library candle, as Clara claimed, but its tacky texture suggests it was applied recently, perhaps hours before the murder. A curious detail, Hastings, Poirot murmurs, for a man who preferred electric lamps. In the library, Poirot finds the red candle, its wick charred but intact. Nearby, in an ashtray, lies a half-burned cigar, its aroma matching the study's lingering scent. Clara swore she only read in the library, yet the cigar suggests someone else was there, or someone wishes it to appear so. Poirot's fingers trace the bookshelves, pausing at a volume of military history slightly askew. Behind it, he finds a torn scrap of paper, its edges singed, with the words "debts repaid" scrawled in a hurried hand. The handwriting is not the Colonel's, and Poirot tucks it into his pocket, his moustache twitching with interest. The investigation takes a new turn when a maid, trembling, reports a discovery in Captain Arthur Langley's room. Hidden in his shaving kit is a folded note, its ink smudged but legible. "Debts repaid in full." The phrase echoes the library scrap, and Hastings, ever quick to jump to conclusions, suggests Langley's guilt. He had a grudge against the Colonel, Poirot, and this note, it's practically a confession. Poirot, however, urges caution. "A clue so obvious, mon ami, is often a lie," he says, noting the note's pristine condition, as if placed deliberately. Langley, confronted, denies writing it, his face flushing with anger. "Someone's framing me," he snaps, his hands straying to his engraved cigarette case. Poirot observes the tremor in his fingers, wondering if it betrays guilt or fear. Miss Clara Henshaw becomes the next focus when a gardener tending the rose beds finds a second pearl earring near the study window. It matches the one found by the study door, and Clara, summoned to explain, grows pale. "I lost that earring days ago," she insists, her voice quavering. "I wasn't near the study." But her alibi, reading in the library, crumbles when Poirot reveals the cigar in the ashtray. "You did not mention smoking, mademoiselle," he says gently, watching her twist her sapphire pendant. Clara admits to lighting the candle but denies the cigar, her eyes darting to the door. Poirot senses she's hiding something, perhaps not murder, but a secret tied to the night's events. Dr. Maurice Blackwood draws Poirot's attention when a footman reports seeing him near the West Wing at 11, despite his claim of being in his room. Blackwood, unruffled, adjusts his spectacles and explains he was fetching a book from the library. Poirot, inspecting Blackwood's medical bag, finds a vial of sedative, chloral hydrate, potent enough to incapacitate. "For my insomnia," Blackwood repeats, his tone steady but his eyes sharp. Poirot notes a faint red wax stain on the bag's handle, identical to the study's smudge. A coincidence, perhaps, Poirot muses aloud, though his tone suggests otherwise. Blackwood's calm demeanour feels too polished, and Poirot wonders what lies beneath his clinical exterior. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, proves elusive, her duties keeping her in constant motion. Poirot corners her in the pantry, where she's arranging jars with mechanical precision. Her devotion to the Colonel borders on reverence, but when asked about the study's key, she bristles. "Only the Colonel had it," she insists, her voice sharp. "No one else could enter." Yet Poirot discovers a second key, rusted and unused, in a drawer of the servants' hall. Fowler claims it's an old spare, long discarded, but its presence raises questions. Was it truly unusable, or is it a clever misdirection? Fowler's fervent loyalty, Poirot suspects, may mask a deeper agenda. Mr. Victor Ramsay, the solicitor, grows increasingly agitated as the day progresses. Poirot finds him in the drawing room, rifling through his briefcase, papers spilling onto the table. Among them is a draft of the Colonel's will, disinheriting Clara and Langley in favour of a veterans' charity. "He was adamant," Ramsay says, his fingers tapping nervously, but he hadn't signed it yet. Poirot notes a faint cigar scent on Ramsay's coat, though he claims to detest smoking. The solicitor's urgency to finalise the will feels suspicious, and Poirot wonders if he stood to gain from the Colonel's death. Poirot tests the study's mechanics again, focusing on the locked door. He experiments with the key, noting its smooth operation, and inspects the windows still bolted. A faint scratch on the window frame catches his eye, suggesting someone tampered with it, though the bolts remain secure. The gardener's tale of a shadowy figure at midnight nags at him, but the physical evidence refutes an external intruder. "The answer is within, Hastings," Poirot says, his voice deliberate. "The locked room is not a fortress, it is a stage." A new clue emerges when a maid reports a missing silver cigarette lighter from the drawing room, engraved with the Colonel's initials. It was last seen the previous evening when Langley and Ramsay were drinking there. Poirot questions Langley, who denies taking it, though his cigarette case, also engraved, suggests a pattern of gifts from the Colonel. The lighter's absence feels significant, perhaps tied to the cigar smoke, but Poirot files it away for now. The household grows restless as rumours swirl. Lady Eleanor Pritchard, pale and withdrawn, avoids the others, her grief tinged with something Poirot cannot yet name. Langley storms through the gardens, his temper fraying. Clara retreats to her room, claiming a headache, while Blackwood offers to prescribe her something, his attentiveness bordering on intrusive. Fowler mutters about disloyalty to the staff, her words carrying a weight that unsettles them. Ramsay, ever the opportunist, presses Eleanor for a meeting, his briefcase never far from hand. Poirot, standing in the library, gazes at the red candle, its wax pooling like blood. The singed paper, the cigar, the earring, the note. Each clue pulls him in a different direction, yet he senses a pattern. The killer wishes us to see chaos, he tells Hastings, but there is order in deception. He resolves to probe deeper, to unravel the motives behind these carefully placed distractions. The note about debts repaid feels too convenient, the earrings too neatly found. The cigar smoke, he suspects, is a deliberate plant, but by whom? As evening falls, the manor's atmosphere grows heavier, the clouds outside mirroring the suspicion within. Poirot, undeterred, prepares for the next phase of his investigation, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The truth, Hastings, he says, his eyes gleaming, is hidden not in what we find, but in why it was left for us to find. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The twilight casts long shadows across Pritchard Hall, the manor's stone facade glowing faintly under a crescent moon. The air inside is thick with suspicion, each guest eyeing the others as if searching for a telltale sign of guilt. Hercule Poirot, his moustache impeccably groomed, moves through the corridors with quiet purpose, his mind a whirlwind of deductions. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, follows, his notebook filled with scribbled observations, though he admits to being utterly stumped by the locked room puzzle. "It's like a conjurer's trick, Poirot," he mutters. Poirot's eyes gleam. "Precisely, mon ami, and like all tricks, it relies on misdirection." The investigation takes a sharp turn when a telegram arrives from London, delivered to Poirot by a nervous footman. The message, from a military acquaintance of the Colonel, reveals a wartime scandal, stolen funds from a 1917 supply chain, siphoned off during a chaotic retreat. The Colonel, it seems, was investigating the matter, suspecting someone close to him, possibly Captain Arthur Langley, his aide at the time, or Dr. Maurice Blackwood, who served as a field medic. The telegram hints at a ledger, hidden somewhere in the manor, containing proof of the theft. Poirot's interest sharpens, the note in the safe. The truth lies in the shadow of valour takes on new meaning. Could valour refer to wartime bravery, masking a traitor's greed? Poirot gathers the household in the drawing-room to probe further, but before he can begin, Miss Clara Henshaw bursts in, her face flushed with panic. "It's gone!" she cries, clutching her sapphire pendant. She confesses to sneaking into the study the previous night, not to kill, but to steal a letter she feared would ruin her engagement to a wealthy suitor, Lord Ashford. The letter, now missing, mentioned a traitor among the guests, though Clara swears she didn't read it fully before it slipped from her grasp. Her admission shifts suspicion. Was she in the study when the Colonel was killed? Poirot notes her trembling hands, her eyes avoiding his, and wonders if her theft uncovered more than she admits. The plot thickens when Mr. Victor Ramsay, the solicitor, produces a startling revelation. In a private meeting with Poirot, he confesses the Colonel planned to donate his entire fortune to a veterans' charity, cutting out Clara, Langley, and even Lady Eleanor Pritchard. He was adamant, Ramsay says, his fingers tapping his briefcase nervously. He believed his family unworthy, tainted by greed. The unsigned will found in Ramsay's papers confirms this, but Poirot notices a discrepancy. The draft is dated a week earlier, yet Ramsay claimed it was recent. Is Ramsay hiding his own stake in the fortune, or protecting someone else? Poirot returns to the study, determined to find the ledger mentioned in the telegram. He searches the safe again, finding only the cryptic note, but a closer inspection of the desk reveals a hidden compartment. Inside is a fragment of burned paper, its edges curled, bearing traces of red wax and the words "Valour Betrayed." The wax matches the library candle and the smudge on Blackwood's medical bag, tightening the web around the doctor. Poirot hypothesizes the Colonel burned a crucial document, perhaps the ledger, before his death. But why? And how did the killer know to plant clues like the cigar smoke and Clara's earring? A new complication arises when Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, is caught eavesdropping outside the study. Confronted by Poirot, she admits to overhearing the Colonel's plans to change his will, which she feared would leave the staff destitute. "This house is my life," she says, her voice fierce. "He couldn't cast us aside." Her loyalty, Poirot realises, is not just to the Colonel, but to the manor itself, a motive that could drive desperate acts. Yet her alibi, mending linens in the servants' quarters, holds, and the rusted second key, dismissed as useless, feels too convenient a distraction. The locked room mystery begins to unravel when Poirot, examining the study door, discovers a faint groove in the lock's interior, suggesting a temporary mechanism. He theorises the Colonel locked the door after the killer left, using a string and weight device rigged to the latch, which was later removed through a narrow gap in the library's adjoining wall. The panel, hidden behind a bookcase, shows signs of recent disturbance. Dust displaced, hinges oiled. This suggests the killer was someone the Colonel trusted, someone who knew the manor's secrets. But who had the knowledge and opportunity? Dr. Blackwood becomes a focal point when Poirot uncovers a medical journal in his room, its pages marked with notes on sedatives, including chloral hydrate. The vial in his bag, Poirot confirms, could have laced the Colonel's brandy, though the glass remained untouched. Blackwood, unruffled, insists the sedative is for personal use, but Poirot notes a faint tremor in his hand when questioned about the wartime scandal. Was Blackwood involved in the theft, and did the Colonel's investigation threaten to expose him? Langley, meanwhile, grows increasingly volatile. A stable hand reports seeing him near the West Wing at 11, contradicting his billiard room alibi. Confronted, Langley admits to wandering the grounds, clearing his head, but denies entering the study. The cigarette lighter still missing nags at Poirot. Its engraving matches Langley's cigarette case, suggesting a personal connection to the Colonel. Could Langley's wartime grudge have festered into murder? Lady Eleanor offers a new twist when she reveals a private conversation with the Colonel days before his death. "He spoke of betrayal," she says, her voice barely above a whisper, "not just in the war, but within the family." Her eyes flicker to Clara, then away, hinting at a deeper rift. Poirot probes gently, learning the Colonel suspected Clara's suitor, Lord Ashford, of financial impropriety, possibly linked to Ramsay's legal matters. Did Eleanor know more than she admits, or is her grief masking complicity? The household's tension reaches a breaking point when a second minor crime surfaces. A silver snuff box, another of the Colonel's engraved possessions, vanishes from the drawing room. The staff whisper of a thief among them, and suspicion falls on Clara, whose earring and library presence make her a convenient scapegoat. Poirot, however, sees this as another misdirection, designed to muddy the waters. "The killer is clever," he tells Hastings, weaving a tapestry of half-truths. Poirot gathers the suspects for a final round of questions, observing their reactions. Clara's panic seems genuine, but her story of the stolen letter raises questions about her timing. Langley's anger feels defensive, Blackwood's calm too studied, Fowler's loyalty too intense. Ramsay's urgency about the will suggests greed, while Eleanor's reticence hints at hidden knowledge. The burned fragment, the missing ledger, the rigged lock all point to a killer who planned meticulously, yet left clues to confuse. As night falls, Poirot stands in the library, the red candle flickering on the table. The cigar, the wax, the note about valour. Each clue is a piece of a larger puzzle, but the picture remains elusive. The killer wants us to chase shadows, Poirot muses, his voice soft but resolute. But shadows, Hastings, are cast by something real. He resolves to test his theory about the lock, to trace the ledger's fate, and to unmask the traitor hiding in plain sight. The manor settles into an uneasy silence, its inhabitants haunted by the spectre of murder. Poirot, undaunted, prepares for the revelation to come, his little grey cells poised to cut through the deception. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The evening sky over Pritchard Hall is a deep indigo, the manor's windows glowing like eyes against the encroaching night. Inside, the drawing room is a tableau of tension, its crystal chandelier casting flickering light on the gathered suspects. Hercule Poirot stands by the fireplace, his small frame commanding the room, his moustache twitching with quiet certainty. Captain Hastings, seated near the door, grips his notebook, his eyes darting between the faces of the household. The air is heavy, charged with anticipation, as if the very walls of Pritchard Hall await the truth. The suspects are assembled. Lady Eleanor Pritchard, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her face pale but composed. Captain Arthur Langley, his broad shoulders rigid, his cigarette case clutched like a talisman. Miss Clara Henshaw, her golden curls framing a nervous expression, her sapphire pendant glinting. Dr. Maurice Blackwood, his spectacles reflecting the firelight, his medical bag at his feet. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler standing stiffly, her black dress a shadow of her fierce loyalty. And Mr. Victor Ramsay, his briefcase on his lap, his fingers tapping with barely concealed agitation. The staff linger at the edges, their whispers silenced by Poirot's raised hand. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot begins, his voice warm yet deliberate. We stand in the presence of a crime most ingenious, a murder within a locked room, a puzzle designed to confound. But the mind of Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived. The truth it is clear when one sees through the shadows of misdirection. He paces slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the polished floor. The Colonel was killed in his study, the door locked, the key in his pocket, the windows bolted. An impossible crime, you say? No, it is a crime of human design, and the killer is among us. The room stirs, eyes darting, but Poirot continues undeterred. Let us reconstruct the night of the murder piece by piece, until the mosaic is complete. Poirot begins with the clues. The red wax smudge on the desk matching the library candle, the cigar smoke alien to the Colonel's habits, the half-finished letter hinting at betrayal, the cryptic note in the safe, the truth lies in the shadow of valour, and the burned fragment, valour betrayed. He recounts the red herrings, Clara's pearl earrings found too conveniently, the note in Langley's room, debts repaid, the rusted key, a distraction, the missing cigarette lighter and snuff box sowing confusion. Each clue, he explains, was placed to obscure the truth, but the truth cannot hide from method and order. The locked room, Poirot says, his eyes gleaming, was not locked when the killer entered. The Colonel admitted his murderer, someone he trusted. The door was locked after the crime, using a simple but clever device. A string and weight passed through a hidden panel in the library wall, which allowed the latch to fall as the killer departed. He pauses, letting the revelation sink in. The panel, mes amis, was known only to those intimate with the manor's secrets. But who? Poirot turns to the wartime scandal, the stolen funds that haunted the Colonel. The telegram from London revealed the Colonel's investigation into a theft from 1917, a betrayal he could not forgive. The note in the safe pointed to valour, a military virtue, but also to its shadow, treachery. The burned fragment confirmed this. The Colonel had evidence, a ledger which he destroyed to protect the guilty, or so he thought. He faces Dr. Maurice Blackwood, whose calm facade falters under Poirot's gaze. Monsieur Blackwood, you are the architect of this crime. A gasp ripples through the room. Blackwood adjusts his spectacles, his voice steady but strained. Preposterous, Monsieur Poirot. I was in my room, as I said. Poirot shakes his head. Non, you were in the study, admitted by the Colonel for a supposed medical consultation. You, who served as a medic in the war, were implicated in the theft of funds, a secret the Colonel uncovered. Poirot details the murder. Blackwood, under the guise of checking the Colonel's heart condition, entered the study at 10:30. The Colonel, agitated by his discovery, confronted Blackwood with the ledger. In a moment of panic, Blackwood seized the letter opener and stabbed the Colonel, a single, precise blow. To cover his tracks, he laced the brandy with chloral hydrate from his medical bag, intending to sedate the Colonel if needed, but the Colonel, suspicious, did not drink. Blackwood then rigged the door to lock after his exit, using a string passed through the library panel, which he later retrieved, leaving only faint dust marks. The cigar smoke, Poirot continues, was your error, Monsieur Blackwood. You burned the ledger in the study fireplace to destroy evidence, but the Colonel did not smoke cigars, and the ash betrayed you. The red wax on your medical bag, matching the library candle, places you in both rooms. You planted Clara's earring and Langley's note to divert suspicion, but your precision was your undoing. Clara gasps, her hand flying to her pendant. Langley's face darkens, his fist clenching. Eleanor's eyes widen while Fowler mutters under her breath. Ramsay, pale, grips his briefcase. Blackwood, however, remains composed. You have no proof, he says coolly. Poirot smiles. The proof, Monsieur, is in the details. The library panel, disturbed only recently, bears traces of your sedative. Chloral hydrate spilled in your haste. The burned fragment recovered from the fireplace matches your handwriting, not the Colonel's, as you attempted to forge a confession. Poirot turns to the others, tying up loose ends. Mademoiselle Clara, your theft of the letter was foolish but innocent. You feared exposure, but you did not kill. Monsieur Langley, your anger was real, but your guilt was planted. Madame Eleanor, you suspected the Colonel's investigation but kept silent out of loyalty. Madame Fowler, your devotion blinded you to the truth. Monsieur Ramsay, your greed for the will's execution was a distraction, nothing more. Blackwood rises, his calm cracking. This is absurd, I demand evidence. Poirot produces the burned fragment, its edges curled, and a vial from Blackwood's bag, its label smudged with red wax. The police, they will confirm the sedative's presence in the panel, Poirot says, and your journal, monsieur, with its notes on wartime accounts, completes the picture. Blackwood's shoulders slump, his defiance fading. The room falls silent, the weight of the revelation settling over the household. Hastings, scribbling furiously, looks at Poirot with awe. "You've done it again, old chap," he whispers. Poirot, however, remains sombre. The human heart, mon ami, is a labyrinth. It hides betrayal, but it cannot hide from truth. Eleanor rises, her voice trembling. "Why, Maurice? Why betray him?" Blackwood, cornered, speaks softly. "The war, it changed me. The funds were meant to save lives, not to steal. But the Colonel, he wouldn't listen. He saw only dishonour. His words hang in the air, a confession wrapped in regret." Poirot nods, his eyes softening. The Colonel sought justice, but justice, it seems, sought him first. He signals to the footman, who fetches the local constable waiting discreetly outside. Blackwood does not resist as he's led away, his medical bag left behind, a symbol of his fallen trust. The manor exhales, its tension easing but not dispelled. Clara, tearful, clutches Eleanor's hand. Langley, subdued, stares into the fire. Fowler, her loyalty shattered, retreats to the shadows. Ramsay, chastened, gathers his papers in silence. Poirot, standing by the window, gazes at the moonlit lawns, his mind already turning to the aftermath. Chapter 7. Justice Served. The morning after Poirot's revelation dawns grey and heavy, the Dorset sky a canvas of rolling clouds that mirror the sombre mood of Pritchard Hall. The manor, once a bastion of order under Colonel Pritchard's iron rule, feels adrift, its inhabitants grappling with the weight of truth. Hercule Poirot, his suit immaculate and his moustache perfectly groomed, stands in the great hall sipping a tisane as he observes the household. Captain Hastings, ever faithful, lingers nearby, his notebook, now filled with the details of a case solved by Poirot's unparalleled intellect. The air, though still heavy with the scent of old wood and wax polish, carries a faint lightness, as if the manor exhales after days of holding its breath. The drawing-room, where Poirot unmasked Dr. Maurice Blackwood, is quiet now, its chandelier dimmed, the fire reduced to glowing embers. Blackwood, apprehended by the local constable after his confession, sits in a holding cell in the nearby village, awaiting transfer to London for trial. His medical bag, once a symbol of trust, remains in the study, its contents catalogued by the police as evidence. The vial of chloral hydrate, the red wax smudge, the burned ledger fragment, all confirm Poirot's deduction of a meticulously planned murder, disguised as an impossible crime. Poirot gathers the household one final time, not for accusations but for closure. The suspects, Lady Eleanor Pritchard, Captain Arthur Langley, Miss Clara Henshaw, Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, and Mr. Victor Ramsay, assemble in the library, where the red candle still stands, its wax hardened into a silent witness. The staff, subdued, hover at the edges, their whispers stilled by the weight of the moment. Poirot's voice, warm and deliberate, cuts through the silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he begins, "the truth has been revealed, and justice, it will be served. But we must understand the why, the how, to lay this tragedy to rest." He recounts the case with clarity, ensuring no detail is left unexplained. The Colonel, driven by duty, uncovered Blackwood's wartime theft, a betrayal that struck at the heart of his military honour. Blackwood, fearing ruin, entered the study under the pretence of a medical check, stabbed the Colonel with the letter opener, and rigged the lock using a string and weight mechanism passed through a hidden library panel. The cigar smoke, the planted earrings, the forged note, all were distractions to obscure his guilt. The human heart, Poirot says, his eyes softening. It seeks to hide its sins, but the mind of Poirot sees through the veil. Lady Eleanor, her auburn hair loosened for the first time, speaks softly. Reginald was a hard man, but he believed in justice. I should have spoken sooner. She reveals her suspicion of the Colonel's investigation, kept silent out of loyalty and fear of scandal. Poirot nods, his gaze kind. Your silence, madame, was not complicity, but love. You will carry the manor forward. Eleanor, tears in her eyes, vows to honour the Colonel's charitable wishes, redirecting his fortune to the Veterans' Fund as he intended. The decision brings a flicker of peace to her weary face. Captain Langley, his anger softened, stands by the window, his cigarette case in hand. I blamed him for that mission, he admits, his voice rough. But I never wanted this. Poirot, placing a hand on his shoulder, reassures him. Your heart was wounded, monsieur, but it did not wield the blade. Langley nods, his shoulders easing, and resolves to return to London, seeking to rebuild a life unshadowed by wartime ghosts. Miss Clara Henshaw, her golden curls framing a chastened expression, clutches her sapphire pendant. Her theft of the letter, though reckless, was driven by fear of losing her suitor, Lord Ashford. I was foolish, she says, her voice trembling, but I loved him. Poirot, ever gallant, offers a gentle smile. Youth, mademoiselle, is permitted its follies. Learn from this, and choose wisely. Clara, humbled, promises to confront Ashford about his own secrets, determined to forge a path of honesty. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, her black dress as severe as ever, stands apart, her loyalty to the Colonel shattered by his death. I served him faithfully, she murmurs, her eyes fixed on the floor. But I failed him. Poirot, his voice soft, counters. Your devotion, madame, was his strength, not his downfall. Serve this house still, and it will endure. Fowler, tears brimming, nods, her resolve returning as she vows to protect Pritchard Hall's legacy, even without her master. Mr. Victor Ramsay, his slick demeanour subdued, gathers his papers in silence. His urgency to execute the will was driven by ambition, not murder, but Poirot's scrutiny has humbled him. I meant no harm, he says, his voice low. I only sought to serve. Poirot, unimpressed, replies, Service, monsieur, requires truth, not haste. Return to London and reflect. Ramsay, chastened, departs with his briefcase, his dreams of influence dimmed. The police, having confirmed the evidence, chloral hydrate traces in the library panel, Blackwood's handwriting on the burned fragment, and the disturbed dust behind the bookcase, prepare to close the case. Blackwood, in his cell, offers no further resistance, his confession a quiet surrender to the weight of his actions. The wartime theft, he explained, was meant to fund medical supplies, but greed corrupted his intent. The Colonel's discovery threatened to expose him, and panic drove him to murder. He saw only dishonour, Blackwood said, his voice hollow. I saw survival. Poirot, standing in the study, surveys the room where it all began. The desk, now empty, seems to hold the Colonel's presence still, its polished surface reflecting the morning light. The hidden panel, the red wax, the cigar ash, all are silent now, their secrets laid bare. Hastings, ever curious, asks, How did you know, Poirot? The lock, the ledger, it was all so convoluted. Poirot smiles, his eyes twinkling. The mind, mon ami, seeks order in chaos. The killer's plan was clever, but no plan can outwit the truth. The manor begins to heal, though its scars remain. Eleanor takes charge, her elegance tempered by newfound resolve. She meets with the estate stewards, ensuring the Veterans' Fund receives the Colonel's fortune. Langley, packing his bags, shares a quiet moment with Clara, their shared grief forging a tentative bond. Fowler resumes her duties, her steps lighter, as if unburdened by the truth. The staff, relieved, whisper of Poirot's brilliance, their faith in the manor restored. Poirot and Hastings prepare to depart, their work complete. In the great hall, Poirot pauses by a portrait of the Colonel, his stern eyes softened in paint. A man of honour, Poirot muses, betrayed by those he trusted. Yet justice, it prevails. Hastings, nodding, adds, A dashed grim affair, but you sorted it, as always. Poirot chuckles, his moustache twitching. "The little grey cells, mon ami. They do not rest until the puzzle is solved." As they step into the waiting motor car, the manor looms behind them, its ivy-clad walls a testament to endurance. The clouds part, revealing a sliver of sun, and Pritchard Hall seems to breathe again, its secrets laid to rest. Poirot, sipping his tisane, reflects on the complexity of human nature. "The heart hides secrets," he tells Hastings, "but the mind, it reveals them. Always." The car rolls down the gravel drive, leaving the manor behind. The case of Colonel Pritchard, with its locked room and tangled lies, joins the annals of Poirot's triumphs. A story of betrayal and redemption in equal measure. Chapter 8. Shadows of Truth. The late afternoon sun bathes Pritchard Hall in a soft amber glow, its golden rays filtering through the ancient oaks that line the Dorset estate. The manor, though quieter now, carries a lingering weight, as if the stones themselves mourn the loss of Colonel Reginald Pritchard. The air is crisp, scented with fallen leaves and the faint tang of wood smoke from the village below. Hercule Poirot, his black patent shoes gleaming, stands on the terrace, his hands clasped behind his back, his moustache a perfect curve of contemplation. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, adjusts his hat, his face a mix of relief and curiosity. "A fine case, Poirot," he says, his voice bright. "But I confess, I'm glad to leave this gloomy place." Poirot's eyes twinkle. "Gloomy, mon ami? Perhaps, but even gloom reveals its truths, if one looks closely." The household, though shaken, is beginning to find its rhythm. Lady Eleanor Pritchard, her auburn hair swept into a loose chignon, moves through the great hall with renewed purpose, her emerald eyes softened by determination. She has taken charge of the estate, her grief tempered by a resolve to honour her late husband's wishes. The Colonel's fortune, as per his unsigned will, is being directed to a veterans' charity, a decision that has brought a fragile peace to her heart. Yet Poirot, observing her as she consults with the estate's steward, notes a flicker of unease in her posture, a subtle tension that suggests not all is resolved. Captain Arthur Langley, his broad shoulders less rigid, prepares to depart for London. The revelation of Dr. Blackwood's guilt has lifted a weight from him, though the scars of his wartime rift with the Colonel remain. He clutches his silver cigarette case, a gift from better days, and shares a quiet word with Miss Clara Henshaw in the drawing-room. Clara, her golden curls framing a chastened face, has vowed to confront her suitor, Lord Ashford, about his rumoured financial dealings. Her sapphire pendant catches the light as she speaks, her voice steady but tinged with resolve. "I won't let fear rule me again," she tells Langley, who nods, his own resolve strengthened by her courage. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, moves silently through the manor, her black dress a constant shadow. The betrayal of Blackwood, whom she trusted as a pillar of the household, has shaken her fierce loyalty to the Pritchards. Yet she remains, her devotion now to the manor itself, its legacy a tether to her life's purpose. Poirot, passing her in the corridor, notes the way her hands tremble as she polishes a silver candelabrum, as if clinging to routine to anchor her grief. Mr. Victor Ramsay, the solicitor, has already left for London, his briefcase lighter but his ambitions dimmed. His haste to execute the will, though not criminal, exposed a greed that Poirot's scrutiny laid bare. The manor feels lighter without his restless energy, but his departure has left questions unanswered, questions Poirot intends to pursue. As the day wanes, Poirot requests a final meeting in the library, where the red candle still stands, its wax a silent reminder of the murder's clues. The household gathers, their faces a mix of curiosity and weariness. Eleanor, Langley, Clara and Fowler take their seats, while Hastings stands by the door, his notebook at the ready. Poirot, his voice warm but authoritative, begins. "Mesdames et messieurs, the case of Colonel Pritchard is closed, yet there are threads, small but significant, that demand our attention. The truth, it is like a tapestry. One loose stitch can unravel the whole." He turns to Eleanor, his eyes gentle but probing. "Madame, you spoke of the Colonel's suspicions of betrayal within the family, but there is more, n'est-ce pas?" Eleanor stiffens, her hands clasping tightly. After a moment she nods, her voice low. "Reginald found a letter, weeks before his death, hidden in his safe. It was from his brother Edward, who died in the war. It spoke of a debt, a financial arrangement with a man named Morris." The room stirs and Poirot nods, unsurprised. The letter, he deduces, was the catalyst for the Colonel's investigation into Blackwood, confirming the wartime theft but also hinting at a deeper family secret. Poirot shifts his gaze to Clara. "Mademoiselle, your theft of the letter was not just to protect your suitor, was it?" Clara's eyes widen, her fingers twisting her pendant. She hesitates, then confesses. "I saw the letter's envelope in the study, addressed to Uncle Reginald. It mentioned Edward's shame. I feared it would ruin our family's name, not just my engagement." Poirot nods, his suspicion confirmed. Clara's act was driven by loyalty as much as fear, but it placed her dangerously close to the murder's timeline. The final twist emerges when Poirot produces a small overlooked clue, a silver cigarette lighter engraved with the Colonel's initials found hidden in the library's bookcase. It matches Langley's cigarette case, but its presence in the library, near the red candle and cigar ash, suggests another layer of deception. Poirot turns to Fowler. "Madam, you knew of this lighter, did you not?" Fowler's face pales, her hands freezing on the candelabrum. After a long pause, she admits, "I found it in the library the night of the murder. I hid it, thinking it would implicate Captain Langley. I couldn't bear another betrayal." Poirot explains, "The lighter belonged to the Colonel, a gift to Langley, but returned years ago after their wartime rift. Blackwood, aware of this history, planted it in the library to cast suspicion on Langley, just as he planted Clara's earring and the forged note. The cigar smoke, too, was a deliberate misdirection, burned by Blackwood to suggest another's presence. The killer, Poirot says, wove a web of false clues, but each was a thread leading back to him. The household absorbs this final revelation, their faces reflecting relief and sorrow. Eleanor, her voice steady, vows to preserve the Colonel's legacy, ensuring the Veterans Fund restores his honour. Langley, gripping his cigarette case, offers Clara a tentative smile, their bond strengthened by shared truth. Fowler, her loyalty redirected to Eleanor, resumes her duties with quiet resolve. The manor, though scarred, begins to heal, its future tethered to those who remain. Poirot and Hastings prepare to depart, their motorcar waiting on the gravel drive. As they walk through the great hall, Poirot pauses by the Colonel's portrait, its stern eyes softened by time. A man of valour, he muses, betrayed by trust, yet avenged by truth. Hastings ever-practical nods. "A grim business, Poirot, but you tied it up neatly." Poirot chuckles, his moustache twitching. "Neatly, mon ami? Non. The truth is never neat, but it is always clear." The car pulls away, Pritchard Hall receding into the twilight, its ivy-clad walls standing resolute. The case, with its locked room and layered deceptions, joins Poirot's litany of triumphs, a testament to the power of reason over chaos. As the manor fades from view, Poirot sips his tisane, his mind already turning to the next puzzle, wherever it may lie. Chapter 9. The Hidden Ledger. The late morning light spills across the rolling hills of Dorset, casting a gentle glow on Pritchard Hall's ivy-clad walls. The manor, though still mourning Colonel Reginald Pritchard, hums with a tentative sense of renewal. The staff move with quiet efficiency, preparing for a future under Lady Eleanor Pritchard's stewardship, while the memory of Dr. Maurice Blackwood's betrayal lingers like a bitter aftertaste. Hercule Poirot, his black patent shoes polished to a mirror shine, lingers in the great hall, his moustache a perfect curve of contemplation. Captain Hastings, adjusting his tie, stands beside him, his face a mix of relief and restlessness. "I thought we'd seen the last of this place, Poirot," he says, glancing at the Colonel's stern portrait. Poirot's eyes twinkle. The past, mon ami, has a way of whispering until it is fully heard. The household is poised to move forward. Lady Eleanor, her auburn hair swept into an elegant knot, meets with the estate's solicitor, not the disgraced Victor Ramsay but a new appointee, to finalise the transfer of the Colonel's fortune to the Veterans' Charity. Her emerald eyes, though shadowed by grief, carry a spark of determination. Captain Arthur Langley, his broad shoulders less burdened, prepares to depart for London, his silver cigarette case a reminder of past loyalties. Miss Clara Henshaw, her golden curls framing a thoughtful expression, has written to Lord Ashford, demanding clarity about his financial dealings. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, oversees the staff with renewed purpose, her loyalty now to the manor's future rather than its fallen master. Yet Poirot, ever attuned to the subtlest discord, senses an unfinished note in the symphony of the case. The missing ledger, mentioned in the telegram that exposed the wartime theft, was never found, its contents burned by Blackwood, or so it seemed. The note in the safe. The truth lies in the shadow of valour, haunts Poirot, suggesting a deeper secret tied to the Colonel's past. As he sips his tisane in the library, where the red candle still stands, a maid approaches, her hands trembling. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispers, "I found something in the attic. I think it's important." Poirot and Hastings follow the maid to the attic, a dusty labyrinth of crates and cobwebs, lit by a single skylight. Tucked behind a forgotten trunk is a small locked box, its surface etched with the Pritchard crest. The maid, nervous, explains she discovered it, while clearing old linens, prompted by Fowler's orders to prepare the manor for new management. Poirot, his grey cells humming, examines the box. Its lock is intricate, but a faint scratch suggests recent tampering. With the maid's permission, he pries it open, revealing a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed but intact. The cover bears a single word: Valour. The ledger, written in the Colonel's meticulous hand, details the 1917 theft of military funds, implicating Blackwood, but also mentioning a second figure, a coded initial, EP. Poirot's eyes narrow. "Edward Pritchard," he murmurs, recalling Eleanor's mention of the Colonel's late brother. The ledger suggests Edward, believed killed in action, facilitated the theft alongside Blackwood, a secret the Colonel buried to protect the family name. But why was the ledger hidden, and how did it reach the attic? Poirot gathers the household in the library, the ledger in hand. Eleanor, Langley, Clara and Fowler take their seats, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. Hastings, notebook ready, watches with bated breath. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot begins, his voice warm but commanding, "the case of Colonel Pritchard is not yet closed. This ledger, hidden from us, reveals a truth that casts new light on the shadows of valour." He explains the ledger's contents. Edward Pritchard, thought dead, was complicit in the wartime theft, a betrayal the Colonel discovered years later. The letter Eleanor mentioned from Edward to the Colonel was a confession, hidden in the safe, until Blackwood burned it to protect himself. But the ledger, overlooked by Blackwood, was moved to the attic. By whom? Poirot's gaze sweeps the room, settling on Mrs. Beatrice Fowler. "Madame Fowler," he says gently, "you knew of this ledger, did you not?" Fowler's face pales, her hands clasping tightly. After a long pause, she nods, her voice barely audible. "I found it in the study months ago when cleaning. The Colonel caught me, swore me to secrecy. He said it would ruin the family if known." She admits to hiding it in the attic, fearing its discovery after the murder would implicate Eleanor or Clara. Her loyalty once again drove her to conceal the truth, though not to kill. Poirot turns to Eleanor, whose eyes brim with tears. "Madame, you suspected Edward's shame, yes?" Eleanor nods, her voice breaking. "Reginald told me bits of it years ago. He wanted to protect Edward's memory, even after death." The ledger, she confirms, was why the Colonel grew paranoid, fearing Blackwood's exposure would drag the Pritchard name into scandal. Poirot deduces the Colonel confronted Blackwood, not just to expose him, but to offer a chance at redemption. A chance Blackwood rejected with a fatal blow. A final twist emerges when Clara, her voice hesitant, reveals a letter she received that morning from Lord Ashford. It confesses his own knowledge of the wartime scandal, learned through financial circles tied to Ramsay's firm. Ashford, fearing Clara's connection to the Pritchards would taint his reputation, had urged her to secure the letter she stole, hoping to suppress the scandal. "I thought I was protecting us," Clara says, her sapphire pendant glinting as she speaks. Poirot, sympathetic, reassures her. "Your heart sought love, mademoiselle, but truth is the better foundation." Langley, listening quietly, admits to a final piece. The missing silver cigarette lighter, found in the library, was his, returned to the Colonel after their wartime rift. Blackwood, knowing this, planted it to frame him, just as he used Clara's earring and the forged note. "I should have trusted the Colonel," Langley says, his voice heavy. Poirot nods. "Trust, monsieur, is rebuilt in time." The ledger's discovery closes the final gap in the case. The police, informed by Poirot, add it to Blackwood's charges, ensuring his trial will expose the full extent of the wartime betrayal. Eleanor, resolute, vows to make the ledger's truth public, not to shame her husband's brother, but to honour the Colonel's pursuit of justice. "The Pritchards will not hide from truth," she declares, her voice steady. As the household disperses, Fowler resumes her duties, her loyalty now a quiet strength. Clara and Langley share a moment of mutual understanding, their futures uncertain but hopeful. Poirot, standing by the library window, gazes at the rolling hills, the red candle's flame flickering behind him. "The past, mon ami," he tells Hastings, "is a shadow that lingers, but truth casts a stronger light." The motorcar waits, its engine purring softly. Poirot and Hastings step into the evening air, the Manor's silhouette fading as they drive away. Pritchard Hall, scarred but enduring, stands as a testament to the Colonel's legacy and Poirot's brilliance. "Another case solved," Hastings says, a grin breaking through. Poirot chuckles, his moustache twitching. "Solved, yes, but the heart, it always holds one more secret." Chapter 10. The Manor's Legacy. The early evening light bathes Pritchard Hall in a soft golden hue, the Manor's ivy-clad walls glowing against the backdrop of Dorset's rolling hills. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and the distant promise of winter. Inside, the great hall is quiet, its oak-panelled walls and crystal chandeliers bearing witness to a household transformed by truth. Hercule Poirot, his tailored suit impeccable, stands by a tall window, his moustache a perfect curve of quiet satisfaction. Captain Hastings, adjusting his hat, joins him, his face alight with admiration. "A remarkable case, Poirot," he says, his voice warm. "You've outdone yourself." Poirot's eyes twinkle. "The little grey cells, mon ami, they merely follow the path of truth, no matter how winding. The Manor is finding its footing after the storm of Colonel Pritchard's murder. Lady Eleanor Pritchard, her auburn hair swept into a graceful knot, moves through the corridors with a newfound strength. The ledger, discovered in the attic, has been handed to the authorities, its revelations about Edward Pritchard's wartime betrayal now part of Dr. Blackwood's trial. Eleanor, determined to honour her husband's legacy, has finalised the transfer of his fortune to the Veterans' Charity, a decision that has brought a fragile peace to her heart. Yet Poirot, ever observant, notes a lingering shadow in her emerald eyes, a hint that the Manor's story is not fully told. Captain Arthur Langley, his broad shoulders relaxed for the first time in days, prepares to leave for London. The silver cigarette case, a relic of his bond with the Colonel, rests in his pocket, no longer a symbol of guilt but of lessons learned. He pauses in the drawing room to share a word with Miss Clara Henshaw, whose golden curls frame a face softened by introspection. Clara, having confronted Lord Ashford about his financial ties to the wartime scandal, has chosen to end their engagement, her sapphire pendant a reminder of her resolve to forge her own path. "I want truth, not titles," she tells Langley, who nods, his own future brighter for her courage. Mrs. Beatrice Fowler, the housekeeper, moves with quiet purpose, her black dress less a shroud of mourning and more a badge of duty. Her decision to hide the ledger, driven by loyalty to the Pritchards, has been forgiven by Eleanor, who sees in Fowler a steadfast guardian of the Manor's legacy. Fowler's hands, once trembling, now polish the silver with steady precision, her devotion redirected to the house and its new mistress. The final threads of the case come together as Poirot requests a last gathering in the library, where the red candle still stands, its wax a silent testament to the murder's unravelling. Eleanor, Langley, Clara and Fowler take their seats, the staff lingering at the edges, their faces a mix of awe and relief. Poirot, his voice warm and deliberate, begins. "Mesdames et messieurs, the tragedy of Colonel Pritchard is resolved, yet a house such as this, it holds memories that demand a final reckoning. Let us ensure no shadow remains." He addresses the ledger's impact, its truth about Edward Pritchard's betrayal, a wound to the family's honour but also a chance for redemption. The Colonel, Poirot says, sought to protect his brother's memory even at great cost. His death, though tragic, has brought light to that sacrifice. He reveals a final discovery, a letter found tucked within the ledger's pages, written by Edward to the Colonel before his death in 1917. It speaks of regret, of a theft meant to save lives but twisted by desperation. "Forgive me, Reginald," it reads, "for I have shamed our name." Eleanor, tears brimming, clutches the letter. "He never told me," she whispers. He carried this alone. Poirot, his gaze gentle, replies, "His silence, madame, was his strength. You carry it now, and you will make it a legacy of good." Eleanor nods, vowing to publish the letter alongside the charity's founding, not to shame Edward, but to show the cost of war and the power of forgiveness. The decision, Poirot sees, frees her from the weight of secrets. Clara, inspired by Eleanor's resolve, speaks up. "I found something too," she says, producing a small worn diary from her room. It belonged to her mother, the Colonel's sister, and mentions a visit from Edward in 1916, hinting at his involvement with Blackwood. "I thought it would hurt Uncle Reginald to know," Clara admits, her voice steady. Poirot, impressed by her honesty, reassures her. "Truth, mademoiselle, is never a burden when shared with courage." Langley, listening quietly, offers a final piece, a memory of the Colonel's words after their wartime rift. "He said honour was not in medals, but in making amends," Langley recalls, his voice thick. Poirot nods. "The Colonel's valour was in his heart, monsieur, as yours is now." Langley, his guilt eased, resolves to volunteer with the Veterans' Charity, a step toward redemption. Fowler, her eyes soft for the first time, admits to one last act. She polished the Colonel's letter opener before returning it to the police, a final gesture of devotion. "It was his," she says simply. Poirot, ever gallant, smiles. "Your care, madam, preserves more than silver. It preserves memory." As the gathering disperses, the manor feels lighter, its scars healing under Eleanor's leadership. The staff resume their duties, their whispers now of hope rather than fear. Clara and Langley share a moment in the garden, their futures uncertain but unburdened. Fowler, overseeing the polishing of the Great Hall's chandelier, hums softly, a rare sign of peace. Poirot and Hastings stand on the terrace, the manor's silhouette framed against the setting sun. The motorcar waits, its driver ready to take them to the station. Poirot gazes at the rolling hills, his mind at rest. "The manor, mon ami. It endures because truth endures," he says, his voice a soothing cadence. Hastings, grinning, replies, "You've given them a new start, Poirot. Quite the trick." Poirot chuckles, his moustache twitching. "No trick, Hastings. Only the order of the mind and the clarity of the heart." As the car rolls down the gravel drive, Pritchard Hall fades into the twilight, its windows glowing with promise. The case, with its locked room, red herrings, and hidden ledger, stands as a testament to Poirot's genius and the resilience of those left behind. The Colonel's legacy, once shadowed by betrayal, now shines as a beacon of justice and redemption.